Historic Preservation Officer. I work with the City of Missoula and Missoula County. And tonight what we're going to look at is what we call a Missoula architectural treasure hunt. The area that we're going to look at is downtown Missoula, where Missoula first began. And the area is outlined in the blue oval shape on this picture from 1891. This picture was taken from Mount Jumbo looking down across the Missoula Valley. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a bunch of images of pieces of buildings in the downtown. And you all can guess where they came from, and then we'll come back and go through and take a look at the buildings that they're actually images from. So we'll start with the pictures and travel on through the downtown. Some of these images are details. All of them are from the downtown, one block on either side of Higgins Avenue, from the Clark Fork River Bridge to the train station at the end of Higgins Avenue. And again, one block on either side. These images are in color. We've tried to do this in black and white, and it's a lot more fun, but a little bit more challenging. As we look at these pieces of buildings, be mindful that the scale could be very large or very small. And that there's sections of buildings. They're not obviously the entire building. The buildings in the downtown range from the late 19th century to the middle of the 20th century. And the most recent building that we see was completed in 1942. Now, obviously buildings have been renovated over time, many of them in the last few years. And we'll also look at a couple of pictures of how these buildings looked like a few years ago. Not all of the buildings were entirely fabricated here in Missoula. Some of the parts came from other parts of the country. Some of the materials, in fact, came from other parts of the world. And some of the things that we see are almost surprising in the modern information that they communicate. And then there are those kinds of things that are surprises. And this one, if you were doing this as a quiz or a game, you could get special credit for if you could identify it. Well, those are all the pictures. And now we'll take a look at the pictures again and take a look at the buildings that they came from. So here we are back at the map. In 1891, there are only a few thousand people in Missoula. Some of the buildings, however, that you see in this lithograph, which is available online from the Library of Congress, can also be seen today in the form of their buildings as they either were, have been restored, or have been modified over time. The Missoula Valley, of course, no longer looks like this. Now it looks like this on a hazy day like today. A little bit of smoke coming in from Oregon. This is the Atlantic Hotel, one of the first hotels down on Higgins Avenue. You can see the signs. The signs are, in essence, historic signs. You could get a pretty good lunch at the Atlantic Hotel, though not anymore. This built form is called a coin. These are multicolored bricks, and on the edge of the building, at the corner of the building, in this case, the old Shepherd Hotel on the corner of Pine Street and Higgins Avenue. This building, by the way, was a 3-story building, and the building burned, and it was renovated as a 2-story building. This one many of you will know. It happens to be on Front Street. As you can see, it was built in 1888. This is what the building looks like now. And for those of you that remember, this is what it looked like a few years ago. You can see the 2 buildings on either side. The Stockman's Bar at the west end. You can see the old Red Cross covering the cladding, now finally restored. Both of these buildings, the headquarters building and the Daily Annex, are on the National Register of Historic Places. This is a detail, a kind of an Art Deco detail of the Christian Science building, now the home to adventure cycling. This is on Pine Street, just 1 block east of Higgins Avenue. Many of you can remember this building, though no one remembers it as it was when it was originally built. This is the Art Museum of Missoula, originally built as a Carnegie Library and originally built as a 1-story building. You can see the addition. The 2nd floor is actually a different architectural style from the original 1st floor Carnegie neoclassical building. The top floor is actually considered to be a Prairie School style, an innovation. The base of the building was built in 1903, and the top was completed in 1914. Another interesting detail, a lot of these cornice elements up at the roof line are elements that were made out of stamped metal. Here we see it on the corner of Broadway and Higgins Avenue, and we can see that now it's the Red Rooster. This is almost an intact and very surprising building. The details are interesting. The colors are somewhat unusual. This is a Firestone building as it was. The structure is pretty much the original structure of the Firestone building from the 1930s. This is on the corner of Patty Street, and you can see the details, including the bright red F, and imagine this building as it was originally, the Firestone colors being red and white. This is a detail that probably thousands of people pass by every day and don't recognize, at least so I've been told. This is over the doorway, the main entrance to the Florence Hotel building, which is now owned by the Alps Company. And you can see the detail right around the front where the flagpole is. One of the interesting things about this building is that it's the 3rd Florence Hotel, and it's the first building that was actually built in Missoula to accommodate the automobile in the downtown. And there was a built-in garage, and still is, with an elevator for cars, a kind of a lazy Susan turntable that allowed the cars to drive in, spin around, and be deposited on a 2nd and 3rd floor levels inside the Florence Hotel building. This building is now being restored to its original 1942 character, and the lobby is open for business and public viewing during business hours every week. Another detail from the 1930s, this is the 2nd Hammond building. You see it here down on Higgins Avenue next to the Wilma. And this detailing is typical of the 1930s. It's a kind of an Art Deco, Art Moderne detailing, a single-story building, replacing a 5-story building that burned in around 1935. As stated earlier, many of these details were stamped in metal. This is cast iron. This happens to be on the Missoula Mercantile Building in one of its many iterations. This building was begun in 1875 and completed in so many stages over the past 100 years. And we can see it now with its windows completely reinstalled, but much of the detailing still intact. Another isolated element from the Florence Hotel, here seen on a postcard from the 1950s after it was completed. And you can see the various street signs, many of the businesses still in place in the downtown. These arches are called Roman arches or Romanesque arches. It's a kind of a barrel vault or a round vault on the Higgins Bank building. This building was built in 1891 and in various stages. It's also on the National Register of Historic Places and is the finest example of what is called Queen Anne Revival commercial architecture in the downtown. Next to it, to the left, you see the Bluebird building, also on the National Register of Historic Places. This is another detail using terracotta and granite, a combination of materials, also on the Higgins Bank building, where you can see it combined with brick here on the south facade. This is part of the Art Nouveau, or Beaux-Arts building, known as the Masonic Temple. Up at the cornice line, the roof line stretches up into the air, forming an ornamental cornice and a surface to protect the facade of the building from the weather. There are multiple elements on the facade of this building. And here we see the Mason symbol, again as part of this facade of the Masonic Temple building. This building is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Another fine detail, leaded windows, cast iron building elements. On the corner of the Bond building, you can see it in this image right here, in the Bond from the 1890s. This would be the Missoula Mercantile, of course. Another image from the late 19th century, the cornice line of the McAfee building. Many of you know this building as the Oxford building. This is the second home of the Oxford Bar that I'm aware of, on the corner of Pine Street and Higgins Avenue. Another fine detail from the Queen Anne Revival period of the Higgins Bank building. This is a lithograph of the bank building from the turn of the 20th century, showing the carriages and carts and the railway system that came down Higgins Avenue and traveled all around the city of Missoula. So you can see also the Hennessy Company, which I believe was a Butte company that came to Missoula as a competitor to the Missoula Mercantile, and it was housed in the Higgins Bank building for a number of years. Another cast iron detail in the downtown, this at the corner of Front Street and Higgins Avenue on the Missoula, to be built again. This elaborate contextual detail for the yin and yang symbol is found in four places actually, on the facade of the Northern Pacific Railroad station at the end of Higgins Avenue, this notion that this railroad took people from the east to the west, and an architectural style designed by architects from the Minneapolis area. Another detail from the Florence Hotel up at the roof line. This is from the Garden City Drug Building, which happens to be across the street from the Florence Hotel, to the back of the Missoula Mercantile Building on the alley. And these are part of the details showing what kinds of prescriptions are available, what kinds of drugs and paper and wallpaper and such things. Still visible on the brick in the alley. This is another metal detail on the facade of the south facade of the Missoula Mercantile Building. And you can see the Florence Hotel in the background. Time has stopped here. It's still 4:10 if you look at the clock. This is on the old Montgomery Ward's building, the corner of Higgins and Main. In an Italianate kind of building. It's the only building in Missoula with a almost three-story full triple hung windows on both the south facade and the east facade. This is a corner detail of a building now known as the Moose Creek Mercantile Building. And I don't have a picture of it, so we'll show you another set of details. This one including the end of the Higgins Bank building and the Bluebird building. It's just down the street, right on the alley. The facade of the Higgins Bank building again, showing the multiple use of materials. Truly a mixed-use building, once scheduled perhaps for demolition, now the home of professional consultants, purveyors of food, and other interesting articles. Another building from the age of the automobile called the Studebaker Building. This was once a Studebaker showroom. This mural now a piece of downtown public art. And the Thai Spicy store actually was an old gas station, and you can see the cutback of the gas station building up at the roof line above